Hello and welcome to another video. In this video we're going to be painting non-metallic metals on blades with contrast paints and highlights. So this is a really cool way of doing non-metallic weapons, and we've got a nice little sword here, and just as a practice I'm just going to move my light because it's making the camera flicker a bit. There we go. And it's a really cool way of doing it. And what we're going to do is we're going to go and show the process. So first, if you haven't liked or subscribed to the channel, please head over and do that now. We are ultra close to 1,000 subscribers. Not long now, about 160 to go, with loads more content coming. And you can also follow me on Facebook and Instagram at 8 Star Painting. So now that's out of the way, let's get started. What we're going to do is I'm going to use contrast paints as follows. Terra Dawn turquoise, this one. I'm also going to be using some black Templar. I've got some contrast medium, and then for the normal highlights and things I'm going to be using Uthwan grey and white scar. So what I've done is first is I've got some Terragon on my wet palette, and I've thinned it quite low down to almost a glaze consistency, with some medium which I have on my palette as well, and it's quite thin. And what I want to do is I'm going to imagine that the blade is going to be like this. So I want the highlights, the dark shades to be here and up here. So I'm going to do 1, 2, 3. All right, so just do it like that, just make it easier for you to see. But what this layer, I want it to be quite thin. And the difference with this and doing normal non-metallics is you're going to be putting the shadows in rather than the highlights. So it's kind of back to front. So first things first, just putting a thin glaze over the top of the whole blade. And then we're going to, as that dries, we're going to strengthen that by putting where our darkest areas are going to be. So you just quite thin layers, nothing drastic. So we're going to put the first one here, like so, and then the second one here in the middle. You can be quite rough with this at the start. You're only basically sketching this out, and then here. And then if it's still quite wet, you can just get a damp brush and feather it out. All right, but we're going to be glazing all that down. So allow that to dry, and then what we'll do is we'll get some more on there. And what you want to do is you just want to slowly strengthen it until it's quite pure. Okay, but you need to make sure that each coat dries. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dry it because I've got a hairdryer and I don't want to make too much noise, and then we'll come right back. So you can see it's almost dry now, and you can see where the shadows are starting to build up. So we've got them here, here and here. So what we do again is we get our contrast paint, and again we just carefully strengthen those areas. Like so. Well, what we're going to do is we're going to get that dry again, and then we'll be right back once it's dry for another layer. Okay, so that's the blade dry, and as you can see we've got the highlights on it, and they're quite dark. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to add a little bit of black Templar to our Terragon, and then we're just going to strengthen those shadows just a little bit more. Again with some thin glazes, just like so. And then this bit here, just like that. Now, if you've got something like this where the transition isn't great, what you do is you just get some Terragon get some medium, literally 3:1 parts. So 1 part contrast paint, 3 parts medium, and then make a glaze. And what we can do is we can just get rid of the excess and pull the glaze over like so, and you can do it here as well and here. Okay, and then allow the glaze to dry, and then do another glaze, and you can do a couple of glazes, and what that'll do is it'll just build up that transition for you like so. And as you build it up, it'll slowly get rid of them. You can kind of see it up at the top here because the transition wasn't so bad, but down here it's going to take quite a few glazes. So what I'll do is I'll do those glazes and then smooth this area out, and then we'll get back into doing some shadows. Okay, so that's took me about 7-8 glazes to basically get that smoothed out a little bit. So what we're going to do now is we're going to continue with our shadows. So we've now got a 2 parts black template, 1 part tarragon, and then just thin it slightly with a little bit of medium. 1 to 2 parts medium. So this is going to be really dark. So again, what this is for is to really strengthen those shadow areas. So very carefully and using quite a thin layer, just bring it to the uppermost areas, and then in this part here, just like that, and then down the bottom. All right, so now what we can do is get some offline grey, get some medium, and thin it right down. Now if you want, you can add a little bit of tarragon into the mix, just to tint it slightly. And when I say tint it, it's like that. So it's still Uthwan, but there's a little bit of a green tint to it. So thin it right down, and just get some. And then what we want to do with the highlight mix, just again get rid of the excess, and then very carefully just bring that highlight up, and then here in the middle just bring it in. Because it's quite like a glaze, you can do it a good few times and it'll slowly build up. And you sort of build up that highlight. Now you could, if you want, use something like Apothecary White at this stage, but I want something a little bit brighter just to enhance those highlights and smooth out these transitions. So just, and if you get this sort of transition line there that's not too great, you can just get some of your original glaze and glaze over it like so. All right, and then what you want to do is get some pure Uthwan grey, and then like so. Now what we want to do is we can get some pure Black Templar, and then very carefully just strengthen those shadow areas. And then we're going to go for a bit of highlighting. So the highlight is Earthline Grey. Okay, and then very carefully, now this is not the best sword, I should have really attached this to a piece of wire. Very carefully keep the sword at about 45 degrees. Then take the brush down the edge. And then do the same here. Like so. And then for the center part, try to get the sword flat, and then the flat of your brush, carefully just catch the uppermost ridge of the blade and just bring it straight down, like so. Now at this stage, what you can do is you can get some white scar and do a 50-50 mix of white scar and Earthline, and just bring up the contrast for the tip of the sword and the bottom. And the bit in the middle there. And then finally get some white scar on your brush, and then very carefully just do the edge of the sword. Like so. And then very carefully do the center line. Like that. And then just to finish off the sword, you just get a couple of lines, and then you can just do a couple of reflective lines like so, making sure they travel in the same direction. And then maybe a couple of spot highlights, like so. And that is basically how you do non-metallic or non-metallic type swords with just contrast paint. Now you can switch out the Terragon for something like the grey contrast paint, and then you'll have a grey finish, and then with the black mixed in you'll get your highlights, and you could use Apothecary White to go over the top to sort of give it that sort of white sheen. The other video that I did with the sort of crystal blades, again you could do exactly the same thing with contrast paints without actually using any of the normal acrylics. Rather than using the Temple Guard and the Screaming Skull for the sort of base coat, you could use maybe a mix of is it the, what's it called, the Athermetric blue, and maybe a little bit of one of the lighter sort of yellows, and make that color and just come in. So you can do a lot of things with contrast paints. So this is just a quick video to show you how quickly you can do these type of blades with just contrast paints and highlights. So I hope this has been really useful. So please like the video and subscribe to the channel and ring that bell, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks very much. Goodbye.